Hey, welcome to Sippers Social Club. I'm Jeremy, and it is my year-end video. That time of the season where I name Whiskies of the Year. Great year on the channel. I want to give a huge thank you to every single person who supported this channel. Whether you came and watched a video, commented, liked, subscribed. For every single person who's joined me on Patreon, thank you so much. Every single person who has sent a sample my way, a bottle my way to review, really much appreciated. Thank you so much. The channel did very well this year. Almost 1.3 million views, gained almost 12,000 subscribers. So thanks so much. Really much appreciate. The whiskey community is the best community in the world. So thank you to each and every one of you who supported this channel. I had a lot of good memories from the channel this year. I think from start to finish, the most fun I've ever had doing a video was my Whiskey Purge Halloween spoof. Just shooting that, editing it was a blast. If you haven't checked that out, make sure you do. Also, Rob from Whiskey in the Six and I started our podcast, The Whiskey Rant. Have lots of fun doing that with Rob. Again, if you haven't checked that out, make sure you do as well. And just the whiskey community in general, interacting with those guys, doing live shows with the WhiskeyTube community has been awesome. Again, probably the greatest group of people are whiskey drinkers. So cheers to each and every one of you. So let's get at it. As usual, I have categories for Whiskies of the Year, and we always start off with Canadian Whiskey of the Year. I thought this was a really good year for Canadian whiskey. I got to try a lot of interesting expressions, some distilleries that I've never had before. But I think for me, the one Canadian whiskey that stood out comes from a distillery that I believe is leading the way in Canadian spirits right now. It's something bottled at cask strength. It's got lots of age to it. And it is the J.P. Wiser's 22-year-old cask strength. This expression they finished in port-seasoned French oak barrels. It gave a great complexity to the whiskey. Really interesting notes, some very unique characteristics to this that I haven't really picked up in any whiskey before. I really quite enjoyed this. I think that the port French oak finish on this is perfectly balanced. I think that Don Livermore did an exceptional job of blending this thing together. Each note is very in line with the next. The flavors are very well balanced together. And just the fruit notes combined with this really interesting kind of like cap gun barrel char smokiness that I got out of this. Really interesting notes. I'm going to review this whiskey coming up really soon because you're definitely going to hear about this one. Last year's winner was the Wiser's 23-year-old cask strength. This year it's going to the 22-year-old cask strength. Excellent whiskey. It's my Sippers Social Club Canadian Whiskey of the Year. Alright, next up is American Whiskey of the Year. This category is always kind of difficult for me because a lot of the really good American whiskey gets released right at the tail end of the year. Doesn't quite get to this market until 2021. Also, because of COVID restrictions this year, the border has been shut down. I haven't been able to get over to the US where I kind of source most of my American spirits from. So this year was pretty tough. I tried to think about how many American whiskeys I tried that were bottled in 2020. There wasn't really that many. But one that did stick out that I thought was an excellent whiskey is the MICHTER'S Toasted Barrel Finish Rye Whiskey. This just amazing power, complexity. It doesn't drink like a super strong rye. It drinks kind of more like a high rye bourbon, which I love. Been a big fan of the MICHTER'S limited releases. Some of them are just exceptional. I reviewed this one before, so you can check it out. MICHTER'S, love what they're doing with the low entry proof barreling. You know, they put their distillate in at a lower ABV. It makes a big difference, I think, in overall complexity, roundness of the flavors, and overall just makes a really delicious product. Really interesting to see MICHTER'S as a distillery. They should have some of their own distillate coming into market soon, I think. It's been about 4 years or so, maybe 4 or 5 years. I don't know if they're going to start blending that into their source stuff or if they're going to release a bottle of just their own distillate, which I'd really love to try. It'd be really interesting to try that. So we'll see. I'm sure MICHTER'S is coming up with some excellent expressions. So yeah, there it is. The American Whiskey of the Year. The MICHTER'S Toasted Barrel Finish Rye Whiskey. Next category is World Whiskey of the Year, and this one always seems like it comes down to one of two distilleries, both in hot climates, both seem to source amazing casks, and they don't like to add that much water to their whiskey. This year I'm going with the Amrut. This is the limited edition rum cask. This is the best rum cask whiskey I have ever had, without a doubt. Bottled at 60% ABV. This one was specially selected for a liquor store here in Alberta, Canada. Amazing flavors coming out of this. Just the cookie, baked goods, sweet molasses, complexity. It seems like everything that goes on in this bottle is just pure magic. I believe this is coming in around 9 years old, which is pretty old for an Amrut bottling. Just exceptional stuff, and well priced too. I think this was only around 130 or so Canadian dollars for 60% ABV for something this good. Can't go wrong. Amrut Distillery doing amazing things right now, and this is the World Whiskey of the Year. All right, next category is Most Pleasantly Surprised Whiskey of the Year. So this is one that I award to a whiskey where I didn't really think much of it. It wasn't really like high on my radar. Something that I didn't really have that much expectation for, but kind of exceeded and kind of blew away my expectations. This distillery I admittedly always overlooked. I'd never sought after really anything from this distillery. It was something that I'd never really gravitated towards. But then when this bottle started getting a little bit of a hype, I was like, all right, let's see what we got. And in this year, it's going to the ARRAN 18-year-old. It's a new bottling, new label design. Really like what they've done, transitioning from their old label to this one. 42% ABV, non-chill filtered, no added color. Really a great sherried whiskey, priced very, very affordable, considering if you take a look at other 18-year-olds in the marketplace. This one coming in around 120 Canadian dollars. Like I said, great quality to price ratio in my opinion with this whiskey. I'm not like crazy about it like some other people are. I think it's very good. I'm not scoring it into the 90s, but I think it's a very nice high 80 with some extra added value points for sure. This one was in my semi-blind, what's the best 18-year-old Scotch. Unfortunately, it went up with some really heavy hitters, but I was enjoying it when I was drinking it blind. So, most pleasantly surprised, ARRAN 18-year-old. Alright, so moving from most pleasantly surprised to most disappointed whiskey of the year. Now this whiskey I wouldn't have normally bought. I purchased it to do a little cool video where I try to recreate a blend. I should try to recreate Little Book Chapter 3. It was a blend of some really good Jim Beam products. I tried to recreate it myself. If you haven't seen that video, check it out. I sent out my blend, which I thought turned out really good and pretty accurate to the original, to a bunch of different whiskey tubers, and they tried it blind, and they gave their opinion. So if you haven't checked that out, check out my video, Am I a Better Blender Than Freddie No? It's some interesting stuff. This one is going to the Basil HAYDEN'S 10-year-old. You can't bottle bourbon at 40% and make it a sipper, in my opinion. I just think it's way too light. This tastes like water to me. I remember Basil HAYDEN'S being a good bourbon when I first started drinking bourbon. I remember having a bottle of Basil HAYDEN'S and enjoying it quite a bit. I hadn't bought a bottle since then, since I very first started drinking bourbon, until this one. And this was not cheap. This bottle cost me well over $100 Canadian. Like I said, I purchased it for kind of a themed video. But it tastes like bourbon flavored water. It just is so light. 10 years old. I mean, I think I said in that video, if you put this thing at cask strength, you might get something good here, but they just dump way too much water into this and charge way too much money for it. Hugely disappointed. I think it was actually probably the lowest scored bourbon I've ever reviewed on my channel before. I think I scored it in the 60s. It was that disappointing to me, especially for the price I paid. So there it is, the most disappointing whiskey of the year. So from going from a whiskey that was not good value, let's go to my best value whiskey of the year. Now I might have given this away. If you're familiar with the channel, you probably already know what I have right here. It's a whiskey that is coming in at cask strength. It's coming in at 10 years old. It is a sherry bomb. It's mixed cask between Oloroso, PX, and virgin oak. Makes a really good complexity layer to it. It's the Glenallachie 10-year-old cask strength batch 4. This one's coming in at 56.1% ABV. I reviewed this one before. Rob and I discussed it on our most recent Risky Rant video, so you know all about it if you follow the channel. I just love this stuff. It's a sherry bomb. It's got good complexity, and it's priced very, very well. I know people were telling me they can find this for around 60 US dollars. We got this from the UK to Alberta to here, and we paid 120 Canadian to the door. So you can definitely get it cheaper than that, probably in most markets. And I still thought, even at that price, even at 120 Canadian, this was a great deal. You're just getting so much whiskey here. It drinks more than its age. This thing drinks way higher than 10 years old, and it's that sherry bomb that people love. Definitely, if you see this bottle, pick it up. You won't be disappointed, especially if you're paying a solid price, like below 100 bucks. Glenallachie 10-year-old batch 4. Next category is a new one that I've added this year. It is the single cask whiskey of the year, and that's going to the Kilkerran 15-year-old Oloroso. This bottle was selected for the US market. Kilkerran, love what they're doing right now in this distillery. They released a whole bunch of single casks, released them to different markets throughout the entire world. You had, Oloroso matured, bourbon matured, Fino, port, the list goes on. I'll put them all right here. Really cool thing that they did, 15 years old. This is some of the very first distillate they had at the distillery. I love Kilkerran. I think it's really cool what they did with the whole work in progress, kind of taking a page from Ardbeg's book and kind of, releasing spirits as they're coming out. It makes a really cool, like, vertical tasting. And of course, their sherried whiskey that they're coming out with now. The mix between their distillate, the peated Campbelltown aspect of it with these sherry casks is just producing some phenomenal stuff. So this one, obviously very hard to come by, but without a doubt, the best single cask I tried this year. So there it is, Kilkerran. Next category is Distillery of the Year, and let's just get right into it. Perfect segue from the last award. It's going to Kilkerran. Absolutely love what they're doing with their bottlings. I mean, you can't really argue with their price to quality ratio. Some amazing expressions coming out of here right now. Of course, last year with their 8-year-old recharred Oloroso cask, I mean, it just made every single person's list for Whiskey of the Year. Just phenomenal stuff, and for the price, I mean, what, $80 to $100 or so Canadian for this? I mean, you cannot go wrong with that. I think these were even way cheaper in the UK when they first came out, before the floodgates opened and people started learning about it. Exceptional pour, of course, the single cask. I've heard that the other ones are phenomenal. Cannot wait to get my grubby little hands on the new 16-year-old. That is just coming in to Canadian markets now. So hopefully I can find myself a bottle of that. Of course, their 12-year-old staple, just great quality stuff, excellent pour. Kilkerran, love just the Campbelltown aspect, love that part of Scotland. The distilleries there seem to do really unique, interesting bottlings. In Kilkerran, still doing it the right way, bottling stuff, how the whiskey enthusiasts like it, higher ABV, non-chill filtered, no added color, of course. And yeah, I am super excited to see what this distillery comes out with in the future. But for this year, this is my Distillery of the Year. So my next category is non-whiskey spirit of the year. 2020 was a year where I kind of branched out a little bit from whiskey, pulled in some other spirits, including a lot of agave spirits. Really like getting into mezcal this year, some great tequilas. But I think for me, like, rum kind of stood out as being a spirit that I really enjoyed sipping on this year. And my non-whiskey spirit of the year is going to FOURSQUARE. This is the 2008 bottled 2020 exceptional cask. Coming in at 12 years old and matured in an ex-bourbon cask, bottled at 60% ABV. Really interesting rum. Lots of unique flavors on here. It's almost like you get this fruit note combined with like Asian spicy noodles. It's really unique and just works well. The flavor descriptions coming out of this seem like they're all over the place, but the balance, it just works, and it's just delicious rum. You talk to people in the rum game, and FOURSQUARE is 100% mentioned all the time. This is my first ever FOURSQUARE that I've personally owned. I've had samples many of times. I've had pours from a lot of FOURSQUARE stuff. Lucky to get my hands on this bottle, and yeah, just really quality stuff, and very interesting, and that's why I like it. It is my non-whiskey spirit of the year. Next category is the best whiskey I've tasted this year. So this is different than my whiskey of the year. But this is a whiskey that was made possible by a very good friend in the whiskey community. It is a very rare, very expensive Japanese whiskey. I had the honor to try this with my good friend Rob, Whiskey in the Six, during a Whiskey Rant podcast on Japanese whiskey. So Narby and Mike, thank you very much. They supplied us a sample with the KARUIZAWA 1981, bottle 2013, 32-year-old cask number 6065. It's bottled at 60.3% ABV. What an exceptional pour. The most unique, I think, chameleon style complex whiskey I've ever had. It just did so many different things. Each time you went back to nose it, you got a different whiskey. Each time you experienced the finish, it was something different. It kept changing, evolving in the glass. That's what I like most about whiskey, when it turns into like that magic elixir where you don't really know what's happening, and your senses are kind of just going all over the place. I don't even remember the tasting notes. I know it was a really like rich, deep, antique style sherry, like that dusty, dirty kind of sherry that I love, the well-aged sherry bomb that you get, but just so much other complexity involved in this, and it just kind of took my breath away, I guess, and so to speak. It just was a lot going on, and hard to analyze kind of everything that was going on about it, but I mean, what an exceptional pour, and without a doubt, the best whiskey I tried this year, hands down. So again, thank you for that. Alright, it is time for the Sippers Social Club Whiskey of the Year. A few things about my Whiskey of the Year. It needs to be something that is good quality, something that is well priced, and something that is available, something that you could actually go out and get with maybe a little bit of hunting, but not so much so that you won't be able to find it. This bottle needs to be available, and it's one for me that I always have on the bar. It is a personal favorite of mine, and this year I did a kind of distillery rundown where I got a whole bunch of independent samples and bottles from this distillery, stuff that was really high aged, high ABV. Did a whole video on it, and kind of came to the determination that, you know what, I was only scoring these, you know, really sought after higher aged expressions of the distillery just a couple points more than I scored their regular entry level expression. My whiskey of the year this year is the Glenallachie 14-year-old, bottled at 46% ABV. I just love this whiskey. I love the Glenallachie profile. In this bottling, you're getting this like unique kind of waxiness combined with all these tropical fruits. It's like a fruit cocktail mixed with this like kind of beeswax, honeyness, very unique in character, an exceptional whiskey. Something you can find that's very well priced. I think in the US market you're looking maybe around $60. Here in Canada, you know, 80, 90, LCBO, probably a little bit more than that. But what you're getting out of this, 14 years old, and just really good quality, a profile that I personally really like. And like I said, I scored this a very high mark, and whiskeys that are 3, 4, 5, 6 times this price, you know, they were getting high marks, but only a couple more. So for value, for availability, for quality, you cannot go wrong with Glenallachie 14. So it is my Sippers Social Club Whiskey of the Year. It's in this glass right now. I've reviewed this before. You can check it out. Check out my rundown of a whole bunch of independent bottlings of this. Really, some really hidden gems in there for sure. But yeah, just like this fruit characteristic combined with this waxiness, almost kind of like a crayon kind of smell to it, like a Crayola wax crayon. And I think like the malty note in here is very good too. The grain note in this is so nice. On the palate, it's honey and it's fruit and it's malt and it's grain and it's like cereal note. It just works really well. Nice. I think maybe the combination of ex-bourbon, maybe a touch of sherry in there as well. But I think mostly You're looking at ex-bourbon maturation for this. Glenallachie, I mean, I just love it. So if you haven't got a bottle of this before, check it out, buy it. I think you'll be pleasantly surprised. So there you have it, the Whiskies of the Year. Let me know what you think of my list. Comment down below, give me some feedback. Let me know what you liked about this channel this year. Let me know if there's anything that you want to see coming up in the future of Sippers Social Club and into 2021. I can tell you that I want to release lots more reviews in the new year. I want to put out more content. Rob and I, with our podcast, The Whiskey Rant, want to do more episodes. Check out updates for some merchandise. I expect to be releasing a new glass in the new year, and a new coin for the Whiskey Rant as well. So lots of merchandise coming up in 2021. And again, a big thank you to every single person who supported this channel. Appreciate it. If you're not subscribed yet, hit the subscribe button. Come back and check me out. You'll see lots of good content coming up in 2021. 2020 had some challenges, to say the least, but I hope the best of your past is the worst of your future. Cheers.